Racism, the hidden weapon that has shaped our world from the age of colonialism to the present. Why should international relations concern itself with race? Race has never been a marginal issue. It has always been fundamental in shaping global politics. The African-American thinker Webb Du Bois observed early on that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line, meaning the relationship between darker and lighter races. That problem remains alive even in the year 2025. Race is more than skin color. It is not merely a biological division of humanity into categories such as white or black. According to Robbie Shilliam, race is the hierarchical judgment of human worth through the classification of group traits, determined by a shared heritage that is believed to be visually recognizable. Human beings have been assessed and valued in two interconnected ways. Biologically, on the basis of physical traits such as skin color, facial features and hair texture, and culturally on the basis of religion, cultural heritage, and the supposed degree of civilization of a group. The modern concept of race arose hand in hand with European expansion beyond the continent, crafted to justify colonialism and slavery. At first, the justification was religious. Europeans relied on Christianity to legitimize the subjugation of others. Indigenous peoples of the Americas, because they were not mentioned in the Bible and were encountered naked, were regarded by Spaniards as barely human savages who needed either conversion or enslavement. The transatlantic slave trade that followed was a horrifying human enterprise. 12 million Africans were transported by force, with 15% dying on the journey. To sustain such a system, Africans were stripped of their humanity and reduced to commodities and property, akin to livestock. From this process emerged the notion of the black race as inherently inferior, while at the same time the identity of the white race as superior crystallized. Debate has long surrounded the origins of racism. Some argue that capitalism and slavery created racism, as Africans were transformed into a source of free labor, and their subjugation was mythologized as if they had been born for slavery. Others insist its roots are older, rooted in Europe's religious conflicts, including anti-Semitism and hostility toward Muslims, which later evolved into racial discrimination against Indians and Negroes in the colonies. By the 19th century, the justification for racism was no longer religious but scientific and civilizational. Europeans placed themselves at the peak of human development, describing themselves as civilized, while others were dismissed as savages, primitive peoples without law, or barbarians, who had law but of a despotic kind. The ideology of the white man's burden took hold, presenting colonization as a duty. It was the obligation of the white man to civilize inferior races, a convenient justification for exploitation and domination. Social Darwinism and the pseudoscience of eugenics reinforced these ideas, misusing evolutionary theory to argue that the stronger, the white race, must dominate, and advocating the prevention of weaker groups, including other races or the disabled, from reproducing. Such ideas culminated in their most brutal form in the Holocaust carried out by the Nazis. Racism did not end with the Second World War but rather evolved. Official systems of racial separation such as apartheid in South Africa and segregation in the United States persisted well into the late 20th century. Today, what is often described as new racism has emerged. It is less explicit and less biological, focusing instead on cultural differences. Cultures deemed incompatible with Western values of liberalism, democracy, and secularism are portrayed as backward or threatening to social cohesion. Muslim cultures in particular have been singled out, framed as inherently resistant to modernity and in need of assimilation. Racism continues to shape the contemporary world in multiple ways. The rhetoric of a clash of civilizations, especially the idea of a struggle with Islam, still influences large parts of Western foreign and security policy. Migration and asylum from Muslim-majority countries are often portrayed in political discourse as security threats or drains on resources, rather than humanitarian issues or the consequences of failed foreign interventions. Institutional racism remains entrenched in systems such as policing and the judiciary. Movements like Black Lives Matter remain active, sparked by repeated incidents of unjust killings of black people by police in the United States and beyond. Refugee crises are frequently instrumentalized for electoral gain, with politicians exploiting fear of the other, the migrant, the refugee, the Muslim, by calling for walls, tighter borders, and restrictions on immigration, portraying outsiders as invaders or criminals. Islamophobia, particularly after terrorist attacks in Paris and elsewhere, has intensified, with Muslims treated as a monolithic and suspicious group. Muslim women wearing hijab or niqab are regularly subjected to verbal and physical abuse in Western cities, while bans on religious dress in countries such as France fuel debates over whether such policies are secular or simply racist. In the digital age, racism has flourished online. Social media platforms such as X, formerly Twitter, and Facebook have been widely criticized for failing to curb organized hate speech and racism, amplified by their own algorithms. The legacy of racism remains deeply alive. Race has always been a central organizing principle of global politics. The racist structures of colonialism and slavery continue to shape global economic inequality and interstate relations. The cultural guise of new racism provides a socially acceptable cover for exclusion and discrimination, whether in domestic debates on immigration and integration, or in foreign policy, under the banner of the War on Terror. To understand the roots of racism and the ways it functions today is the first step toward resisting it and building a more just world. With regards, Al Salam Channel, your companion in understanding international politics.